Hello, this is Pete the Tech Guy, and we are here for another edition of my ongoing series called Interviews with Immigrants, where I interview an immigrant to the United States, talk about their country, our country, the factors for coming here, and so forth. And my subject for today's interview is Alvin. And Alvin, where are you originally from?
I'm from El Salvador.
And how old are you?
I'm 23.
So you're 23 years old. You were born in El Salvador?
Yep. Yep.
All right. And how long ago did you come to the United States?
14 months.
So you've only been here for about a year, a little over a year now. Okay, so a little over a year. Did you spend your entire life in El Salvador before you came to the United States?
Yep.
Now, tell me about El Salvador. Now, this is in Central America, north of Panama, right? What was El Salvador like in terms of living there? What is the country like?
It's a beautiful place, it's a tropical place, but the thing is that insecurity is it's turned like dangerous, because gang members.
Now, was it always like that when you were younger? I mean, now, how many in your family? Are you the oldest, the youngest, the middle child?
I'm I'm the older one.
You're the older. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have two sisters and three brothers.
So big family. You're a family of six. Come from a family of. I'm the youngest of five myself. And are the rest of them all still in El Salvador?
No, they were born here.
Oh, they were born here, but you were. So did your parents come here and you stayed in El Salvador?
Yep.
How long ago did your parents come to the United States?
My mom, I think around 21 years, and my dad, I think around 19 years.
So that's very interesting. Your parents came here a long time ago, but you stayed in El Salvador. I got to ask you, why did that seems very odd to me. Who did you stay with? Did you stay with your aunts or uncles or something like that, or?
I stay with my aunt, but it's like my mom, cause my entire life, I spend with her.
So when you were young, let's say 7 or 10 years old and so forth, what was El Salvador like in terms of what was school like? What did you go do for fun? What was it like for a young boy in El Salvador 15 years ago when you were young?
It was good because I was studying. I was in. I used to play with my cousins, play soccer, play another kind.
Now, is soccer the big thing in El Salvador?
Yep.
Not baseball at all, huh?
No.
See, the joys of baseball. I wish that's the one thing the Dominicans have over El Salvadorans is baseball, baseball, baseball. but soccer's your game. Well, you have the body of a soccer player. You're thin and you're lean and muscular, unlike me, who's a bit plump.
Yeah, soccer is our first sport.
So now you went to did you went to school in El Salvador, I presume? Now did you go to high school and college in El Salvador as well?
Yep.
And what were you studying there?
I was studying computer engineer.
So you were studying to doing computer engineering in El Salvador. And how far had you gotten in your studies before you came here?
What do you mean?
Well, how many was it? Your first year of study, second year of study?
No, I was in my fifth year.
Fifth year study. So this was college level at this point.
Yep.
Now, again, you said that things were good when you were young in El Salvador. What did you hear about the United States when you were young in El Salvador? When people talked about the United States, what did that mean to you back when you were young in El Salvador?
It's too cold.
Yeah, that's right. So it must have been now El Salvador. That's not quite at the equator, but it's a lot farther south. So what's the coldest it would get in El Salvador?
the color would we get is like 50 degrees, I think.
So 50 degrees would be a really, really cold day, and I imagine it would get over 100 a lot.
Yeah, the average of there is like 90 degrees and 100 degrees. So
Now, did you live in the city? Did you live in the countryside? Where in El Salvador did you live?
when I was too young, I was living outside of the city. But when I was start to study at college, I have to move to the city.
And what was the name of the city?
San Miguel,
San Miguel. All right. And what part of El Salvador is that? Is that the north part, the south part, the central part, near the ocean?
near the ocean.
Atlantic or Pacific? Which side? Which ocean?
Pacific.
All right. So, so when you were young,
We only have Pacific Ocean.
oh, I thought El Salvador bordered the Atlantic as well. Okay, so you said when you were young, it was a pretty nice place. You got along good with your cousins. What you knew about America was basically it was cold. Now you said your parents had come here earlier. Did you hear from them or from your brothers and sisters who were up here at the time?
From I don't know. I think from then, but my brother and sister, I don't used to talk a lot with them. So
And are they in the same area here in You're in Massachusetts. Are they in Massachusetts too, or are they someplace else in the country?
I have one sister and one brother here in Massachusetts, but the others are in New York, and another is in Chicago.
So they're scattered around the country a bit. So okay, so you're in El Salvador. You're growing up. You're enjoying soccer. You're enjoying time. And did you work as well while you were in Salvador, or were you just going to school?
First, I was only studying, but sometimes I used to help a friend to work. Just help. No work at all.
Was it like farm work? Was it work in the city? What kind of stuff?
It was on a store.
All right. So you did store work. You were going to school. Things were pretty good. So and were you planning when you were younger to stay in El Salvador? That you liked it? You're gonna stay put?
Yeah, but like I told you before, so things turn like dangerous.
About how long ago?
About 5 years ago, I think. Start like gang members.
Was it something that the people, everyone was suddenly worried about going out, worried about where they were? Because could it strike anywhere?
Yep.
And that's when you decided to come up to America.
Yeah, my mom told me, why do you not come here? And I say, I'm gonna think about it, and after think about like 2 months, I think, I decided to come here.
So it took a little time for you to decide to come. So you didn't come so much because you didn't like your country. You could have had a future there, but you decided that it just wasn't safe anymore.
Yep, that's the thing.
So that leads to the question. Okay, so you're in El Salvador. You decide to come up here. How long did it take you to earn the money to come up? Was it expensive to come to the U.S.?
Not at all, cause I came here like a refugee. Refugee, I think is the.
So your uncles came here on a refugee. Did you come here on refugee status as well?
Yeah.
Now, how long did it take you to be cleared? If you want to be a refugee, obviously you have to do paperwork and apply. How long did it take for that to be finished?
I think a year.
Now, obviously, you said you lived with your aunt. Was your aunt? I'm sure your aunt was sorry to see you go because she liked having you around. But was she happy to see you go to get out safe, or what? How was she? How did she feel about it?
she was when I she was devastated.
Do you still keep in touch with her by phone or by email?
Yeah, I call her every time I came.
Okay. Now, your parents and your brothers and sisters have been in America for a while, so I imagine did they come when they were very young? So were are they more acclimatized to America than you? Were they here for a lot of years when they were young?
Sorry, can you?
Okay. How old were your brothers and sisters when they came here?
Uh, they were born
Oh,
here.
they were born here, so they're completely American in terms of in a lot of ways. Is that Is it sometimes strange to you when you see them and they're so American, or are they very American, or are they within basically an El Salvador community here?
Actually, they are American, but they have like a Salvadorian culture. So,
Okay, so you come to America. You had family here, so you had some idea of what to expect. What was the first thing that struck you when you got to America? Where did you come to first? What's the first place where you landed in America? The first city. Where did you come in America when you came here?
I think Miami.
Miami. And how long were you in Miami?
A night.
Oh, just one night, and then so one night one night in Miami. There's a lot of jokes we could make about that, but where did you go from Miami?
Anywhere, just not hell.
So now you're in Massachusetts. How long ago did you come to Massachusetts?
Since I'm here, since I came here, so around 14 months.
So you came after Miami. You ended up in Massachusetts. Now, what was the biggest surprise when you got to? I mean, El Salvador's not a big country, and you got basically people with a single culture. It must have been to come to a place like America. It must have been a big shock in a lot. Even though you see about America on TV, and stuff, it must have been quite a shock in some ways.
Yeah.
What was the thing that surprised you the most about America and Americans?
Because I was studying English in my country, but when I came here, the English wasn't the same. So, cause no, it's faster, and you have to be focused in what people is telling you, cause you have to get the idea what they talking about.
Plus, you got expressions. You got the slang, and you might learn English at a school in El Salvador, but you don't know the slang, so the slang is going to be different. Plus, the slang is different in each community, so that must have been, people will say something, and it's like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, I had a kind of idea, but I had to be focused in what they talking about, cause I don't wanna lose the point, you know.
Now, obviously, one thing that I've noticed about Americans in general, and I speak as an American, is that when we think of people, you hear people talk about the Hispanic vote or Hispanic this, Hispanic vote. It's as if to some in America, everybody who lives south of Miami or south of Texas is one big country. But that's not really the case. I mean, even when we've talked about this before, the language, the Spanish in El Salvador is a little different than the Spanish in Mexico. It's a little different than the Spanish in the Dominican Republic. Is a little bit different than the Spanish in there's the regional differences. And do you run into that when you're with other people who speak Spanish, whose first language is Spanish? The regional differences, do you hit that every now and then?
No, in my country we speak the same, but when I came here and I start to speak to other people who speak Spanish, but not from my country, they speak totally different. And sometimes I said, what are they talking about? Because I didn't understand what they were talking about. So
Now, does it bother? Again, like I say, Americans will sometimes look at people who speak Spanish as if they're one country. That's got to be irritating a little bit for you because El Salvador, again, very different country than a lot of the other countries. Your own history, your own culture, your own politics. Different. You support different teams in soccer and so forth. I imagine that must get on your case a little bit. That an American will look at you and think, "Oh, you're the same as this guy from Mexico or this guy from."
yeah, but it's not. It's totally different.
Where you work, there are people from all over the world. I mean, we run into people from Africa, from Asia, we talked about all sorts of people. The English that you hear. I mean, it's one thing to listen to me, because I was born here and I'm in my 50s, and even though I'm short a tooth right now, my English is very American, Northeast American. But you're getting an English from a lot of people who don't speak English, and some days that's got to just be crazy for you.
Yeah, cause speak with someone who learns English, who came young to this country, so it's different to speak like a native speaker like you. It's like kind of hard because you have to be focused in their accents.
Now, you mentioned cold. Now, this is something I interviewed Hannah, and she mentioned the same thing about cold. It must have the first time you're in Massachusetts. The first time the snow came, that must have been a pain in the neck.
Oh well, I was like excited when the snow came, cause I never been snow before, so I wanted to know the snow. So, but when I realized that you have to clean your house after a snowstorm, man, I start to hate it.
It didn't take long, so the winter must be hard for you around here. The winters must murder you.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to learn how to live in that.
Now, you're working in the warehouse right now. Now, are you also still going to school to continue your studies?
And right now I'm studying ESL, English as second language, so in Massachusetts Community College. I hope after finish English, continue my study.
So the idea is work long enough and study so your English is better, then you can go back to your computer stuff.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Now, do you see yourself staying in America when your studies are done, or do you see yourself going back to El Salvador if things become a little bit safer, or what do you want to do?
Well, when my studies are done, I think I have goals. So I have.
What are your goals?
Well, buy a house, get my family when I'm older. So
Now, are those goals for here in America, or are those goals for back in El Salvador?
I think here in America.
Now, we talked a little bit about how the climate has been different for you. We've talked a little bit about dealing with people who've also come to America. Now let's talk about Americans and dealing with Americans. Now on TV, I imagine, American culture is worldwide. So if you watch a movie or something, you see Americans a particular way. We're the average American that you would run into at work, like myself, or like one of the bosses who are at work, or the people you run into the store. Were they what you expected, or how were they the same as what you expected, and how were they different?
They're nice, I think. In my job, the Americans who work with me, they're nice. So that's what I, that's what I have to say. They're nice. So
Is it again? But was it what you expected? Were Americans? Did you have an idea in your head of what an American was like, and were Americans what that idea was? Did they turn out to be what you expected to thought? Okay, Americans are like this. Oh, and Americans are like this, or Americans are like this, or this is strange, or this is different.
I got the point. When I was young, I thought that American all were tall, cause cause I used to watch TV and I saw them like tall guys, skinny and tall guys, and when I came here, I saw they're like small Americans too. So I'm not the only one who's small.
Yeah, I remember Hannah said something about the first time she saw a blonde, blue-eyed America. It was like seeing an alien, as she put it. So, now, do Americans act the way you expected to? Now, we talk about appearances. You were surprised to see Americans all different sizes. Did Americans act the way you expected as well, in terms of just how they talked, how they worked, how they carried themselves?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big surprise. Well, plus you had your parents and your brothers and sisters. Did they give you any advice saying, all right, you're coming to America, this is what you need to know? What kind of advice did they give you?
Follow the rules.
That's good advice anywhere. Now, again, obviously, you've come from El Salvador. And El Salvador's in a rough spot. Now, you say you keep in touch with your aunt. Excuse me. Are things still pretty rough down there? Are there any signs of things getting better?
I don't think so.
So, is it going to be a long time before you go back even to visit?
I think so, yeah.
Now, of course, you mentioned you have family in New York. You have family in Chicago. Have you decided that you're going to basically stay here until you got your education, or have you decided you want to stay here in Massachusetts for good, or are there different parts of the country you want to see or plan on taking a look at?
For now, I think I'm gonna stay here for a while. Then I'm gonna decide and go to New York. Cause my dad is there, so he was talking to me about some projects,
So you've got some options over here, but right now the plan is work, get your education, and maybe someday get a house of your own and to raise a family.
Correct.
Now I don't know if you're aware of this, but what you just described is what is generally called the American dream. Have you ever heard that expression?
Yeah.
So, it's funny, as I listen to you describe that, although the safety wasn't an issue in Sicily, a lot of it is the same thing that my grandparents came in for. They want a better life, maybe get education. Well, not so much for themselves, but for their children and so forth. Is that really, when you've talked to people who've come to America from your country, is that what people really, it's all about? Coming here, getting a better life, and for yourself and your children?
Yeah, they were always talking about that. So
now, if you had to give a piece of advice to, let's say there's a young person in El Salvador who decides, I want to come to America, either because it's not safe in El Salvador right now, or just because they've heard about America, they want to come. If there's one or two pieces of advice you could give to a young man or woman from El Salvador about America before they would come, what advice would that give? What advice would that be? What would you tell them about America? What to do before they come here?
Learn English.
So learn English is number one still.
Yeah, cause if you don't speak English, or you don't have an idea of English, you're lost.
First thing, any other advice besides picking up the language as soon as you can?
Um, Focus in your goals, cause I think if you focus in one goal, you can get it, you know, in the future.
Now, okay, you've been here for about a year, as you said. You say you're working, you're going to school a bit. If else, let's say tomorrow, the violence in El Salvador stopped. You snap your fingers, no more violence in El Salvador. Do you think you'd still stay here, or do you think you'd go back?
I don't know. I don't know at all.
So we must be doing something. If the answer is I don't know, America must be doing something right. All right, now America. I mentioned Americans before. What advice would you give Americans about immigrants in general, or immigrants from El Salvador in particular? What should we? Is there something that we need to learn that would make us be able to cope better, in your opinion?
We can be friendly. We can be friend of you. We can be work hand in hand with you. So side by side with you. Sorry about the expression.
That's all right. In other words, there's no reason why we can't all can't get along, is what you're trying to say, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And if there's in terms of, and I got to ask you this question because this is something I've asked everybody. Is there one thing about America and Americans that you think is very, very strange? You know, like you look at it and say, why do they do that? Is there anything that comes to mind? Other than the fact that we're not big into soccer. Soccer is the number 5 sport in America. I mean, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and then soccer. Other than the fact that we're not into soccer that big, is there one thing about America that you say, boy, that's weird?
I don't know. For me, everything is normal.
Boy, that's the biggest endorsement I've heard of America from all the people I've talked to. Well, I want to thank you, Alvin, for spending some time talking about America and your experiences here and back home. And I'm going to give you the microphone. If there's one last thing you want to say for the people who are going to hear this, one thing you want to say to those people, here's your chance to say it. Something you want to say for somebody who's going to be listening to this, that you want to leave an impression with them.
Follow the rules, focus on your goals, and that's it.
All right. Well, thank you again very much for your time. And I would remind everybody listening, this is the latest in a series of interviews called Interviews with Immigrants. I have several other ones that I'm in negotiations to have with people from different continents, different backgrounds, to try and get a picture of what people who come here are thinking, what they're hoping, and so forth. And I mean, the one unifying thing is nobody seems to like snow. But other than that, it's a very different perception. If there are people or people from countries you want me to check out, please email me at thetechguy@thetechguyblog.com. That's thetechguy@thetechguyblog.com. Till then, this is Pete the Tech Guy saying thank you very much for listening, and we will be back next time.